You're listening to Cool and Unusual Punishment. This is episode 14 of Chosen. My name is Tyler. Your name is Jody. Hello, Jody.
Hello. Don't ask me how I'm doing because I don't feel good. Got it?
I'm not going to do it. You see me weave those road cones? Jody, what are we talking about tonight?
At the top, let's remind everybody, we are talking about Valleybrook Church, Eau Claire, Wisconsin, during a very particular period of time. Most of the events end in 2016. We are not speaking of Valleybrook Church today.
Understood.
In this episode, we are talking about the narrow pathway, which is, well, do you remember when Doug sent along a letter to folks and it was outlining his future plans and what he said he would and wouldn't do? And one of those things was, I'm definitely not going to be a pastor for a while.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that lasted not very long because the narrow pathway was started June 26th of 2015.
So he waited like 3 months?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you know, God calls you.
Grapevine, Texas.
Now that's not in Wisconsin, correct?
No, indeed, it's not. The first little bit of information comes from Tales from the Cult, Matthew Mitchell's blog site. And I'm going to pretty much read some of this verbatim, okay? There was the mysterious church in Michigan that this whole saga supposedly started at, which is the church that Doug came from before he came to Valleybrook.
I see.
There are a few people who know about that church, but nobody will talk about it. However, the vibe is that it became problematic.
Okay.
For one reason or another. Very little is publicly known about what happened in Michigan with Doug. Then there was Valleybrook. Thanks to all of you who have read and shared this website, a lot is publicly known about what happened there. And, you know, a lot of those things are things we've shared in this podcast. It seems that part 3 will take place in Grapevine, Texas at a new church called the Narrow Pathway. A website for the church circulated through several online communities on August 24th, and by the morning of the 25th, the website was pulled offline. However, a PDF was obtained via a Google page search and is posted here for public knowledge, which I will get to. The straight and narrow path was another buzzword at Valleybrook. However, it was different than the, quote, core lies buzzword, in that it actually has biblical roots. Matthew 7:13 says, enter through the narrow gate, for wide is the gate, and broad is the road that leads to destruction, and many enter through it. What it ended up becoming, though, was basically a moniker for obedience, and that obedience was to Doug. As far as the brief appearance and abrupt departure of this website goes, it's textbook to how Doug has operated so far. When Valleybrook came under scrutiny earlier this year, controversial documents were removed from the website to hide behind anonymity. Those documents were all recovered and are posted in the media section, things like the Chosen paper, etc. When the website was found, conceivably by somebody in the Chippewa Valley on August 24th, it spread like wildfire through the communities of ex-Valleybrook members. The Contact Us link at the bottom of the page got a lot of use. Doug was under attack, and he hid behind anonymity. Delete the site, and no one can prove anything, right? Additionally, Doug went to some extra trouble to protect his identity when registering for the web domain. The original link was to a Weebly site, which looked somewhat like the URL to this very site, except replaced WordPress with Weebly. I looked into the whois information, which is basically a record of who owns what domain on the internet. along with some personal information about them, and found that Doug used a registrar notorious for its use by criminals in dangerous or legal activities called domains by proxy. There are very, very, very few legitimate reasons that you'd want to have some privacy with your domain registrations. There are many more underhanded reasons that you'd want it, one of which being, of course, anonymity. Another is deniability, and since the only way to get the personal information for a registration out of a company like Domains by Proxy is issuing a subpoena, it's easy to deny any ties to a site that is called into question for any reason. When looking for a different church to call home, be guarded about what newly formed churches you go to, especially if you're in Grapevine, Texas. By all means, attend and join new churches. Just do your research and know who your pastor is. Know what the leadership team believes. If you don't like something, you don't have to keep going there. All right, so Matthew wrote that, right?
Yeah.
And I pulled up the business information about the narrow pathway. Like I said, it is currently has a forfeited existence, which generally means in Texas that you didn't pay filing fees, you have been inactive for a long time. You would be able to be considered legitimate again if you got caught up on all of the fees you might have.
As a church, you mean?
Well, it's a nonprofit.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. The Narrow Pathway is a Texas domestic nonprofit filed on June 26, 2015. The registered agent on file is Doug Lebsack. The company has 3 contacts on record. The contacts are Bennett Siebert from Grapevine, Texas, Doug Lebsack from Grapevine, Texas, and Nate Lebsack from Grapevine, Texas.
I think you had mentioned that in some other episode that when he left to go to Texas, he knew somebody there.
Family.
Okay. Okay.
That might very well be a family member.
But in any case, that's why he was going there. He had contacts there, and that's why. Okay.
Yeah, and it had been told to me by somebody who had been a source for information that it wasn't. He had mentioned that before in his time at Valleybrook that he was perhaps interested in going to Texas someday, but it wasn't
sure,
sell my house and
right.
I'm gone 2 weeks from now, and Okay, so we have the Narrow Pathway, and we will of course share this. This is actually quite fun to look at. A distinctive Christian community. You can enter God's kingdom only through the narrow gate. The highway to hell is broad, and its gate is wide for the many who choose that way. But the gateway to life is very narrow, and the road is difficult, and only a few ever find it. Jesus.
Well, I was going to say that already some familiar themes showing their head very clearly. I was oh, he came right out and said it. Okay,
yeah.
I guess I don't have to point it out.
I mean, this guy, what is it with people, What we are about, the Narrow Pathway has one goal: to help people enter God's kingdom. Nothing else matters to us. We aren't interested in religion or traditions. We're not influenced by the current trends in church ministry. We know our purpose: to enter through the narrow gate and walk the narrow pathway that leads to life. We wouldn't leave it for anything.
He's a Washington outsider of church, of religion.
Oh, wait. The narrow path isn't for everybody. It wasn't made for the masses to travel. It doesn't comfort a lot of people because it leaves no room for negotiation with Jesus. He laid out a clear-cut pathway that is difficult to walk, but the reward is totally worth it. It's everything we've ever wanted: love, joy, peace, rest, freedom, and life to the fullest. These aren't theoretical for us. They're our reality. I mean, these guys are really making this out to be a lot more complicated than what I grew up with. I mean, basically, it was tell God that you are sorry for what you've done. Your sins will be forgiven. We're all flawed people. We know it. We make mistakes. We say we're sorry. And then at the end of it all, we can go to heaven. Like, if you believe in God, that's kind of like, you know.
Yeah, this has a real boot camp.
Yeah.
Sort of
well,
energy,
it reminds me of the
like,
Chosen
most of
stuff.
you, well, you know, I was thinking is that this is coming in. I mean, this is starting hot. This is starting at 100. But then again, like, he didn't found Valleybrook. This is him getting to start something from the ground up. And yeah, he's not mincing words in terms of like how he sees a person's relationship to his, you know, his flock or whatever.
We don't identify as a church. I mean, I'm just rolling my eyes.
Not making that mistake again.
We identify with the church. The church can't be identified as one group of people in one place. In fact, there are many people who attend a church that have nothing to do with the church. The church is comprised of people all around the world who walk the narrow pathway that Jesus laid out for us. And the Holy Spirit is knitting these people together with the love of God to make us one body, preparing us for the return of Jesus. So we can see where this is going. We aren't built on personalities. You will hear a lot of the stuff from Wounded. The narrow pathway doesn't leave room for superstars or celebrities. It requires strong yet humble leaders who are willing to lay down their lives to go first so that others can follow. We're much more concerned with being the body of Christ than personal notoriety or recognition. Reminds me of that. Remember, one of the things that they gave out all this material on was some sort of like obsession with being, you know, being popular or whatever, like at Valleybrook. So that definitely sounds like something that they were manufacturing to be a much bigger problem than I think, you know, really was. We don't care about numbers. Jesus said only a few walk the narrow pathway. We have no idea how many few means, so we don't care to count. We are defined by love. We are highly invested in helping people find their true identities. Jesus sacrificed his life so we can inherit our true identities, yet most of us still have no idea who we are created to be. It takes leaders who are committed to deep personal investment to help others discover the unique identities that God created them to live out. This stuff is all the problems.
Yeah.
Like these God-created identities. We rely on the supernatural. We make things as simple as possible. We bridge the gap between theology and life. The Narrow Pathway, 1345 Main Street, Grapevine, Texas. If our message strikes a chord with you and you're ready for a distinctive and passionate Christian community, please come see us. We look forward to meeting with you. Meeting time, Sundays at 6 p.m. Okay, so these people cannot sit down for a minute. You were like literally run out of town, had no legal consequences to anything you've done, and you're just going to start again.
I mean, this feels different than, you know, maybe some other people we've talked about. Like, this is, I don't know if there was baggage that followed Doug.
Like what, Nate? What do you mean?
I mean, like media, or like if he had a reputation at all that he had to, because this feels like self-actualization in terms of the person he wants to be as a pastor. He got out of Wisconsin and now like he's starting fresh, and like clearly he knows what kind of church he wants to run and is starting with that.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of, I feel like in that I hear a man who's kind of empowered to like do it the right way this time. Like this is what he wants, and he's good, and he's doing exactly what he intends to without having to like backdoor it in like he did at Valleybrook. Yeah,
right.
This seems like you can just shed all that baggage and just be like, oh no, I got me and my boy here. We got a new Bible passage that we're framing everything around, and we're good to go.
Yeah, I mean, spoiler alert, that church is no longer active.
Oh, okay. Okay. I was going to ask, like, oh, so they just don't have a website then, I guess. That's got to be weird. All right.
Yeah. So Matthew writes that article. Matthew shares that stuff. And Matthew writes something else in which the whole blog post is not about this, but the first part is. So that's what I'm going to read. Mm-hmm. In the article titled The Narrow Pathway, which I started with, I mentioned the website was deleted, and I provided a version of how the web page looked before it was deleted. The website came back online a few days later, and the text was replaced with a letter saying that their systems were hacked and this site was not available to the public. I want to be clear, in my investigations and reporting of the events surrounding Doug Lebsack's relationship with Valleybrook Church, I have never used any underhanded methods to obtain my information. Everything I have ever and will ever post has either been public at some time, or it is a private document for which I have permission from the appropriate party to post. And speaking of not using underhanded methods, ... he starts talking about the financial report. So Doug tried to say that their site was hacked and all this stuff, probably because he had to shut the site down because he did not want anybody else reaching out to him. And so then there had to be some explanation for why the site would be down. And this was what he decided to go with as far as...
Right.
Well, are you ready? This gets even weirder, okay? So, this website stays up for a period of time, and the site starts sharing some very weird information. So this is like several pages, and this is from Nate's wife.
Oh boy.
Who is now Jessica Lebsack because...
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
I mean, she could be a Cheryl Hines situation.
That's pretty funny. My name is Jessica Lebsack, but many of you knew me when my name was Jessica Mitchell. Here's what's weird about this, is it's like, did we? Because this is like down in Texas.
This is on the new website?
Yes.
Is where this came from? Okay.
Like, why would anybody, you know what I mean?
I mean,
maybe she's assuming there's a bunch of people.
That's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I don't know what kind of congregation, if any, they're
it's probably just the three of them.
Fostering. So if it could be in some sense, like, I know this is getting traffic from people back home, and this is kind of an indirect way to...
Yeah, like maybe it's like assuming, I'm going to really stick it to a bunch of people in Eau Claire, Wisconsin.
Matthew, all right.
Well, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, when I got married, I became Jessica Hagedorn. Throughout the past 20 years, I've had a front row seat watching a whole lot of things happen at Valleybrook Church. It's been up close and personal for me ever since I was a little girl.
You're probably wondering how I got on this website.
I have been waiting patiently, and I know that it's my time to say something about what I've seen and what I've experienced at Valleybrook Church. I have perspective that no one else does.
So this is definitely directed towards, I mean...
But why would you put this on the website for your new church that you are trying to, like, oh, hey, we're just, like, hey, we come with a ton of baggage. Yeah. We actually got basically run out of town. We actually adopted these people. They're grown-ups, and she's writing a letter. Like,
I mean, it could be that, like, they were getting... so many correspondences from people in Wisconsin, and then also I don't know how much this spilled over into like the community, that people who were or may have been interested in coming like heard about it and were like asking questions, and so they had to like, all right, we gotta just blow the top off this.
Yeah. So she was the daughter of an overseer at Valleybrook, okay?
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, so she met Nate through the church, I believe. I'm sure we're going to see.
Okay.
And she's going to start trying to make it seem like I'm an every person, right? I was your daughter's friend. I was one of your youth as a middle schooler. I babysat for you. I grew up and volunteered as a child. I was always at church with my dad. I taught you how to braid your daughter's hair. My husband and I bought your mom's house after we got married. So she's trying to be like, I'm relatable and all this stuff, right? I friended you on Facebook and emailed you back when you had a question. I stayed home alone with my kids, sometimes several nights a week, so that you could meet with my husband and Doug as overseers, church leaders, wounded participants and leaders, and hurting people because, quote, you just had to talk with them ASAP. Your marriages were failing. Your children were struggling. Your addictions were out of control. Your families were falling apart. You didn't know what to do. So they did their very best to say yes as much as they could to each one of you. Each Sunday, I got my 3 young children ready for church, bringing them to and from church so that you could hear my husband lead worship and teach. Oh my God. So she started out.
Raise up your dirty little hands to him.
Oh, wow.
So
she's not resentful.
Nasty kids can come cycle in and out of my...
This feels like it's this woman on the narrow pathway with this kind of attitude. I don't know. As much as was humanly possible, I was invested in the church. I will never forget when Doug came to Valleybrook. Everyone was so uncomfortable because Doug was all about the truth. So, she has a falling out with her dad, which I'm not going to get into here, because there's something very odd that happens after what I find a very odd thing to be. This to me is odd enough, right? So she has paragraphs about how upset she is about her father. I was really surprised how people tried to capitalize on our move to Texas and make it into something dark and evil. All this drama happened as Nate's biological mom kept acting like she didn't know where Nate was, like he had been kidnapped. Cries went out on Facebook to help this woman find her son. Are you serious? He's 33 years old with a wife and 4 kids. Our address was on the internet.
He's legally adopted by his lead pastor, okay? He's an adult.
And now I also have a last name that's different, okay?
Okay.
In the middle of all of Nate's biological mom's drama, she would post things about our kids and claim them as my grandkids. Oh. I'm really trying here.
Oh, it's weird to both take the stance that, like, look, Nate is an adult. He's a grown man. This is ridiculous. And also talk about Nate's mom as if she's his biological mother, as if like Nate was adopted as a child. And like, that's not his real mother. Obviously he's adopted. For her to be like, these are my grandkids. That's something you would say if he was a child with a different real family that is adopted. It can't be both, you know?
Right. You are not going to ever sell me on the fact that being adopted at that age and keeping it like a secret for a long time is normal. Why would you need to keep it a secret? Why would you not tell your church? There was something inside them that recognized it, like that there was something, or people wouldn't understand or something, you know. It's very important to me to say very clearly today that just because you publicly proclaim something doesn't make it true. Nate's biological parents were never true grandparents from the very beginning. We didn't trust them then. We don't trust them now. Anybody who knew us at that time would know how we felt about his parents, even way back then. We set boundary after boundary until finally we could see we were not going to be respected. We made the decision to walk away completely. We walked away years before Nate chose to be adopted into a new family that loved who he was and supported completely who he was becoming. And Joy, my dad's new wife, needs to understand that my dad forfeited his rights as a grandpa to my kids the day he walked away from my family and never planned to come back. Joy, in marrying him, you certainly did not inherit grandchildren. Nobody owns my children, whether you proclaim it or not. And on the same note, publicly proclaiming that someone is a cult leader or lying down in the fetal position and claiming that you have been spiritually abused does not make it true. It does not even make it true when you get people to rush to your defense after making such a proclamation. Well, that's my voice for her, I guess, now. I really thought people sincerely wanted to get well at Valleybrook. I know that some did, but it's become so clear to me that more than anything, most people wanted control.
Yeah.
Okay. I was truly surprised at how badly people wanted to ruin things for my family. How badly they wanted to make Nate's adoption into something dark. He never had parents who gave a crap about him, and now he does. But people wanted to ruin that for him instead of celebrating it. As for me, I finally have a dad in Doug who sees me and loves me. I think that more than anything, people didn't want to see Nate and I become lub sacks. They tried their best to destroy Doug and Nate's reputation, driving it into the ground with the hopes that it would destroy our family too. It didn't work. No, I don't think anybody wanted to destroy them. I think they just want them to go away from destroying other people.
Yeah. No, I think what they want is the thing that she was mocking earlier about spiritual abuse. Well, you little piss babies. Oh, you're the wife of a pastor at a church that was investigated and found it's not
right.
It's not haters coming out to get you. What a shitty thing to say to people who were abused.
Yeah. I know the truth about Nate's growing up and the truth about his relationship with his biological parents. Being adopted was one of the best decisions Nate has ever made. We were waiting for the perfect moment to share his adoption with more people, but we knew it would cause waves for some people. The assistant lead pastor at the time decided that he was the authority on all of it and had the right to announce it to the world. He did this because he needed something to hang Doug for, something that would make people feel like they couldn't trust our family. It didn't take long after that for Nate's biological parents to take it to the papers. What really hurt was that we loved the people in that church. We prayed for them all the time. We gave our lives and our time to really invest in them. And then when Doug and Nate resigned, the overseers told them to stay home that day because of threats that people were going to come and interrupt the service. And the overseers felt that if we were there, the people might riot. Now think about that. If people might riot because of your presence, you think that there's not some reason for that at a church? People aren't normally rioting at church. And then the overseer who read our resignation letter to the church decided to modify our letter so that Doug and Nate could never express their hearts to the people who loved and served all those years. Yes, this whole entire story was full of corruption and lies to the point that you couldn't hear our family's heart for Valleybrook Church on our resignation day. We couldn't even tell you goodbye that day because we were blocked by the corruption that lived in that place. I couldn't come and walk through the building one last time, the place that meant so much to my heart and my story. I really couldn't believe it when I found out. It made me so sad. The new lead overseer after my dad was clearly living in the same darkness as was my dad. What a coward. This overseer even had the nerve to come over to my house every Monday morning to have time each week with my husband and Doug because he wanted a relationship with them so much. Then he suddenly was the one that led the charge to destroy Doug and Nate publicly after we had left. He suddenly changed his mind about all of it. It has to make a person wonder what that man is really up to. I have been learning a lot about codependence, and Karpman's drama triangle pretty much sums up my life. Codependent people only want to feel what they want to feel, and they only face what they want to face. What?
Dory, I'll put a fun musical sting right on the end of that great line.
Does she even know what codependency means? They only form relationships with other people who will support them in their codependent fantasy. Okay. All right. My dad only let people get close who would support his fantasy. The only friends he ever had were people that he looked down on. He talked about all of you like you were idiots. And he let you close.
Not like I did.
Right.
3 paragraphs ago.
Because he could be a hero, and in return you would support his fantasy. That is what codependent people do. Codependent people are the people that are in relationships with folks who are like, a lot of times there's like Alcoholics Anonymous and Al-Anon, it's like the people who are on the other side of those with, this, what the heck
I guess,
is any of this?
Well, first of all, I'll say that it's hilarious that I thought that when this started, that this might be in any way addressed to the people of this new town. But
yeah.
I'm aware that Doug, in his public statements, if nothing else, was at least a better politician about this. He was a little more diplomatic about his wording, and like this is like Facebook level.
There's a lot of victim shaming going on here. I don't even like reading it because I hate it so much.
When public figures have to address something and you can tell that there's so much like bitterness that just seeps through what they're saying. And it's like, oh, it's so obvious, like the emotional state you're in when you're writing this.
Yeah.
This is not subtle.
Well, wait till you hear this, okay? Talk about not subtle. I want you to really think about what I'm going to just read. Something that has fascinated me in the middle of all of this drama is that people have been so bold in their attack. I mean, Doug knows things about some of you that have the potential to ruin your lives.
Oh boy.
Can you imagine, like, Googling, maybe, you're new to Grapevine, Texas, and you're like, what are the churches in this area? And the narrow pathway, look at this is like an alternative church. I'm not interested in convention. And I'm going to go to their website and you're going to read this? Like, can you imagine being like, what in the world is going on that this is on this website? Some of you would lose your jobs and your families. I know a lot of what you've done. From just listening to my host over the years as a child and as an adult. It's some crazy stuff. I've wondered why you aren't more afraid.
Can
you...
You know how I was a trusted person for you when you had no one to go to and I was someone you could confide in?
I've wondered why you aren't more afraid, but then I realized why. Even though you've accused Doug of just about everything under the sun, deep down, you're still counting on his godly character to not expose you.
Oh my God.
Because you know that he really does love you no matter what you've said or done. You've always counted on that. How ironic that you're still counting on him to be that man, even after you've publicly bashed him and claimed that he's something else. That is so troubling to me.
And
it is so troubling to me.
People who talk to you and talk to Matthew, so many of them were anonymous specifically because they feared retribution.
Yeah.
She's shaming people for having the naivete to trust them, essentially.
As pastors.
Right.
Think of like going to confession.
Right.
As a family, we live unashamed. We know the truth of what God did at Valleybrook and the truth about all of the stories and lies. We have nothing to hide. Here is everything that was said against us. And this is links to all the Leader Telegram articles,
Right.
some of which I've used. Leader Telegram, for those who aren't aware, is a local newspaper. And interestingly enough, Tales from the Cult. So I think it's also important to shed some light on the young man who wrote Tales.
Oh my God. Okay, I got to get him.
I think it's also important to shed some light on the young man who wrote Tales from the Cult and is constantly quoted in the Leader Telegram articles. You know what's so great about stuff like this is that all you have to do is read it and all the work is done for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to share what I saw in him. This boy never had a dad, and it was evident that this left a big wound on his heart. This is why Nate and I, as his high school youth leaders, had a lot of compassion for him. It's why Nate tried to care for him and be there for him. This was not a friendship at all. It was a caring leader reaching out to help a sad young boy at the youth group. This boy did not become part of the staff team. He just remained responsible for some technical things for the youth group and for helping with stage sets. The church even paid him a small stipend each month to encourage him. Listen, that means he was employed there. You know, why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? But after Nate and I were married, we talked more about the unhealthiness of this young man. Nate decided that he had to set boundaries with this boy, which made the young man really upset. Shortly after setting these boundaries and saying no to this boy more often, we were able to see by his reaction just how unhealthy this relationship truly was.
Oh, they saw an unhealthy relationship? Okay.
This young man has made many claims, but one thing worth clarifying is that he wasn't fired from a staff position at Valleybrook. He was asked to be done as an intern, and that was for many reasons that don't need mentioning. I'm sharing this information because I think it brings a lot of clarity to the whole picture. The way I feel about this young man is that he doesn't deserve anything but compassion because he is truly lost and dying for connection. He needs help, and I hope he gets it.
Not that I...
Sad.
Not that I encourage it or would want to hear it, but like, it's not... You're like, well, he knows that we're going to read this and all that. It's like, well, this is just like, he was a real bad seed. And we tried, but he was such a bad seed, and he was a bad boy, and he was no good.
Mm-hmm. And we were very concerned for this young man.
But he was lost. Like, this is just, again, this is why people don't come forward, because she singled him out. And of course, it's just like, we gave him money. He did all this, and we gave him a stipend because he's so lost, and he's bad, and he's I'm gonna be honest. I'm gonna be honest here. He's rotten.
He's rotten.
She's not saying anything except that clearly she doesn't like him. But like, I don't know.
Listen to this last. Listen to this. Maybe the Leader Telegram should consider paying for him to get counseling instead of exploiting him on the front page of the newspaper.
No, I think the church should probably pay for him to get counseling.
Along with everybody else. And everything that I've mentioned, here's the bottom line. As I have seen the truth of my dad, I've come to understand just how much his double life has affected me and infected so many other people's lives. Just a reminder that I'm not going to read too much of it. I'm going to share it just in the interest of time. But like, we'll get to her dad.
I was going to ask, is that now, like, I'm kind of interested. He was an overseer.
Yeah.
Is that not a story?
He like left his family for somebody else and this and that and the other. But it's weird how it rotates through admonishing everybody at Valleybrook, and then we're going to go for Matthew Mitchell, and he was never any good, and now we're back to my dad. But who he really is will play out behind closed doors. That's her dad. I've lived on both sides of that reality now. It holds true for my dad as a father, but it also holds true for Doug Lebsack as a father. But I think most of you already knew this, right? That's why none of you ever asked any of the Lebsack kids about their dad. That's why you never talked to Robin about any of it. That's his wife. And that's why you didn't come to rescue Nate and me from the cult in Texas. You didn't want to hear it from us Lebsacks either. You knew that none of the lies were true. You didn't want to face the truth. It would ruin your public display of victimhood, and it would take away from your codependent fantasy. So, yes, after everything we walked through, we were obedient to his call and we moved to Texas. Something that Valleybrook overseer, staff, and key leaders knew was how God was speaking to us that our time at Valleybrook was coming to an end. Yeah, definitely. Doug and Nate even talked with these leaders about probably moving to Texas several months before we left. That is true. They mentioned it at some point. You cannot even begin to tell me. I refuse to believe. You put your house in the market.
The button trying to put on the end of this. God told us to get out of town really fast.
There were even a handful of people that came into Doug and Nate's offices and confirmed this to them in prophecy on several occasions about moving to Texas. The amazing part of the story is that God used people like my dad and other leaders who lied, manipulated, and controlled to open the door for me and my family to move to Texas. I had to laugh at the whole fled to Texas in the newspaper. We were so done in Wisconsin, and God made it so obvious that we were supposed to leave right away by opening every door to lead us forward. We were led into something very new and unexpected in Texas.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Tough news, Wisconsin. God really, really thrown us under the bus.
The way that he unfolded each step of his plan for us, the more our trust for him grew. What a relief it was to come here and feel so free and so alive. Attached below is the actual resignation letter that no one got to hear. I wanted to attach it because it means a great deal to me for you to hear our heart. I don't actually have that, but I'm also attaching a letter I recently wrote to my dad, the man who was my father. I didn't choose to walk away. He did. This is the man that was the face of Valleybrook, the man who was so worshipped as an idol. It's like, no, that was actually Doug, not your dad, the overseer.
Am I to understand, did she go through a similar arc that Nate did? Like, did she end a relationship with her father and now Doug is her essential
dad?
Right, okay.
This is your beloved leader. This is what really lived at the core. And if you followed him, this is probably what lives at your core too. This is my story.
Tell you, that's a church I would go to. See that on the website.
So there's an attached letter, and it's 10 pages, okay? And it's Dad. And it's today I looked at your wedding pictures with a young woman from the Philippines. Someone sent me a text, told me that your dad married somebody who looked younger than me on Facebook. It's like, listen, I've seen 90 Day Fiance.
Right. That's what I was picturing.
So this, and I will share this. It's...
You're making a face.
It is a long, because there's something very interesting about all of this. It is an incredibly long letter, and I'm not going to read it because what the more interesting part is. So that letter is attached to the other letter that she's, or essay.
So that was also on the site.
Yeah. So she wrote this essay that's posted on the site. There's 2 attachments. One is the resignation, which I don't have. The other is that letter, which I do have, and we will share. But it's angry at her dad who left and met somebody else. And it goes into her whole trauma, my first boyfriend and all this. Here's the interesting part, though, okay?
Okay.
Now, I'm just putting this out there, okay? So that's called Jess to Greg. That's the letter, right? That's the attachment. You can get information about attachments. And so when this was given to me also, I was given this information page, right? And it'll show you total editing time, 207 minutes, 10 pages, the number of words, last modified. It was created 11/20/2016. So we can at least then recognize that this church's website was active for at least a year, because that was in 2015. This is now in November 2016. This document was last modified December 14th of 2016. And the author and the person who last modified this letter is Doug Lebsack.
How about that?
So was it on his computer and she was using his account? I don't know. But like, how bizarre, right?
Yeah. I'm because this is the equivalent of like on a photo you can look up EXIF data, like location. It'll show your photos have more information than you might realize.
Yeah.
This is the equivalent of that for like a Word doc.
Yeah.
And the author is Doug Lebsack.
Yes, and last modified by Doug Lebsack.
Yeah, it's maybe not conclusive, but it would suggest that this was done either by Doug or on Doug's computer. I don't know what to say about that, because I don't know what's in that letter, but
and how you would differentiate Doug's writing.
But according to the legal realities of adoption, that could just be her using Dad's computer.
That's right. Somebody writing a letter to their dad, whomever it was. I just felt like, you know what? That's for the docs, because it's very directed and personal.
Yeah.
And really the interesting thing about it is that, either Dad has one computer and everybody's using it, or he wrote it, which, could be possible as well. So, that's the narrow pathway.
Well, I guess I was hoping to know more about this church, but maybe it didn't.
It's no longer.
Right. And maybe it didn't. If an outpouring of people from Wisconsin contacting them, like, took the website down, and then they came back with this like spiteful like F you to Valleybrook or whatever. Maybe there wasn't anything to this church beyond that. I was hoping we'd get a new a crisis intervention report or something, but I guess the church maybe didn't make it that far.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really know the history of the ending, but
okay.
They don't live in Texas anymore either, so.
Oh, no?
No, they are somewhere else now, which, we'll say for the next episode. We are nearing the end of this. So I guess if you're out there listening and you have thought to yourself, I have a story to share about this, it would be the time to reach out.
Right.
Because pretty soon we will be finishing up on this, but quite a journey has been had.
Yeah, I guess you don't expect at this point a lot of growth or genuine remorse or anything. I wasn't expecting it, but that door was closed in really the most telling way.
And it just, if you listen to Luganbild, you remember that while the notice is being put on the door of the State Theater about the Xcel Energy bill, Joe Luganbill is like literally trying to get a job somewhere else already, right? In the same way, it's like these guys move and Doug makes this statement about how he's, not going to just immediately return to ministry and all of these things. And also was recommended to him several things to do before he would ever consider doing that. He does none of those things and immediately returns to it.
Yeah. And then his surrogates are like, how dare you even suggest that?
Yeah. Like you're going to tell me that.
Sorry, his children, his legal children.
His legal children. You cannot discredit the number of interviews done that assisted in compiling a very long report I mean, that letter I read, or essay or whatever, is just really difficult to read it because, listen, we're covering this story and you try to not be biased and all of this stuff, but there was spiritual abuse that happened. There was.
Yeah.
And that is victim blaming and threatening people, like with information they gave to their trusted pastor and reminding them that, oh, I can't believe he hasn't done anything with this information. Like, talk about ruining lives. Yeah, it makes me feel very bad for the people that were on the receiving end of all of this. When this is Nate's wife sharing an experience on their new church's website.
Also really drawing some lines. It's not leaving town with your tail between your legs. It's still very like taking shots and I don't know. It's I wouldn't go to that church.
No. So next episode will likely be our last episode with an asterisk. Mm-hmm. But otherwise, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Yep. Stay tuned. Chosen is presented by Cool and Unusual Punishment. Research and interviewing by Jody Haas, with editing and mixing by Tyler Haas. Our theme music for this series is by Zavely. You can find more music by him on Apple Music. Just search for Zavely, Xavly. This podcast is a proud member of the Nerd and Tie Network, a coalition of Wisconsin-produced shows that you can find at nerdandtie.com. You can also join the discussion in the forums at nerdandtie.social. You can reach us directly by sending us a message on our Facebook page or by emailing us at mail@coolandunusualpunishment.com. You can find links to all of these things and more in our show notes by visiting our website, coolandunusualpunishment.com.
We don't identify as a church. I mean, I'm just rolling my eyes.
Not making that mistake again.